Good afternoon again. My name is Chris Kerr. I am the Executive Director of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, and I'm excited to welcome everyone today, and especially grateful to our partner, Interfaith Worker Justice, for their willingness to take time out of their busy schedules to facilitate this webinar on justice for Hyatt workers. We have a number of folks from Interfaith Worker Justice who are here with us today, and some partners of theirs. And so I'm just gonna list through some first names of folks. We have Brian, who's with us today. He's a Hyatt worker in the Chicago area, I believe. And then Levi, who's a UNITEHERE boycott organizer. Adam, who is an online organizer for Interfaith Worker Justice, and then Sung Young, who is a lead organizer for Interfaith Worker Justice, and as well, who's gonna kind of lead things off or keep us organized here today. For those who are joining us today, we are also recording this webinar, so you can view a video of it with audio afterward if you missed parts of it today, and it'll be available on the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice website. Also, if you're having trouble, right now we have our attendees with their audio turned off, but we will open that up in a moment so that folks can ask questions. You can also pose questions online through the question mechanism in the GoToWebinar box if you'd like to do that, and I can share them with our panelists this afternoon. Just to provide some context, as many of you know, at the end of July, UNITEHERE, representing Hyatt workers across the country, initiated an international boycott of Hyatt hotels. And it's no secret that the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice is going to be at a Hyatt hotel in mid-November of this year, and it was a very challenging discernment process to figure out what were the ways that ISN, the Ignatian Solidarity Network, was capable of responding to the situation. And while we know there are certain things that we couldn't do because of many different circumstances, we are grateful for the partnership of Interfaith Worker Justice and others to bring attention to the issue of Hyatt workers, the issues that Hyatt workers face across the country and the world in a variety of different ways at the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice, including this webinar and being able to share about the boycott and the challenges the workers face through this webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to Sung Young and say thank you very much to everyone, and I'm excited to hear more about this today.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Yeon Choi-Morrow. I'm one of the national organizers at Interfaith Worker Justice. We're an organization that is network-based. We have folks all around the country that are working with religious folks as well as workers to advocate for better working conditions and wages, especially for low-wage workers. If you want more information, you can check us out at our website, IFWJ.org, and we'll put up some information at the end of the presentation as well. So we live in a society where an average CEO pay is about 350 times more than an average worker pay. And this is the highest ratio of all time. And if you look at it internationally, I didn't put up the stats, but we are by far have that biggest ratio gap. I think the next closest one is Venezuela, and their gap is 60 to 1. So that kind of gives you an idea of how far out we are in terms of CEO pay and worker pay. And this is just a couple examples of the CEO worker pay ratio that is even beyond the 350 that was named as the average. At United Health Group, the CEO makes 1,737 times more than what the average worker makes. So the little black dot that's magnified is showing how much the worker makes versus the CEO. And at Walmart, the CEO makes 717 times more than their average worker. We also live in a society where no one working on minimum wage can afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rate, only working 40 hours a week. The lowest number of hours a week that someone has to work to make rent is in the state of Arkansas, where they can work 63 hours a week to make rent. And the highest number of hours needs to work to make rent is in Hawaii, where someone or a family would have to work 175 hours a week in order to make rent. Over 17 states, people have to work over 88 hours a week to make rent. And here in our state, where I'm sitting in Chicago, they have to work average of 81 hours a week in order to make rent. We also live in a society where workers' wages are stolen. If you look at the statistics, they're staggering. 60% of nursing homes stole workers' wages. 89% of non-monitored garment factories in Los Angeles stole workers' wages. And 78% of restaurants in New Orleans stole wages from their workers. And we live in a society where people are not making minimum wage. Federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, and in San Francisco, which has the nation's highest minimum wage, it's at $10.24 an hour. Statistics show that 1 in 4 workers are not paid a minimum wage, and this happens because people are paid in cash, and it happens most frequently in restaurant industry where you leave your tip on your credit card and all that tip does not go to a worker. Or because they're tip workers, they have a lower minimum wage, which is around $2.25 an hour, and the owners don't make up the difference if the workers don't make their wages all in tips. So that's where workers don't make the minimum wage. People also experience overtime violations. So overtime is 1.5 times the pay of what your regular rate is. 90% of back wages collected from DOL are for overtime violations. So this is Department of Labor. People can file a complaint to Department of Labor and they can do an investigation. And 90% of complaints that are filed on withheld wages or back wages are because of overtime violations. 76% of low-wage workers are not paid for their overtime. And we see this over and over again in restaurant industry, hospitality industry, as well as big box stores like Walmart. A lot of ways that this happens is people are paid by the shift rather than by the hour. And so catering workers are told that they'll be paid $45 for a 3-hour shift, a shift which is normally 3 hours. But if that shift goes into 4 or 5 or 6 hours, they still only make $45, and that's how they're not being paid for their overtime. So our organization is committed to working on solutions, partnering with workers and the religious community to do that. And we work mostly in two areas. The first is with worker centers. Our work is with worker center. We partner with worker centers to provide health and safety education for workers. A lot of our worker centers do know your rights training for workers, so they know what their rights are. A lot of times people don't know that they're not being paid minimum wage or that they're not being paid overtime. And our worker centers also engage in campaigns to find long-term solutions to the problem. So it's not just about getting the wages back that were stolen for that specific worker, but engaging workers and developing leadership so that they can work on finding long-term solutions. And sometimes this means working on public policy campaigns. And we've had a number of city-level ordinances where people have passed ordinances around wage theft or raised the minimum wage. For example, the San Francisco minimum wage work was spearheaded by one of our worker centers, the Young Workers United, who led the effort in raising the minimum wage in San Francisco. We also work with religious allies, and so we have various networks of religious leaders around the country. A lot of them are pastors and organizations, or are retired pastors, or seminarians, or people working in nonprofits that are committed, have strong faith commitments that are committed to justice issues. And really the role of the religious allies are to amplify the workers' voices. It is to partner with workers, walk alongside workers, and get their story into their congregations or to their workplace, to their families, and to their networks. It's also to educate the public about worker injustices, and so a lot of our religion and labor group folks will do presentations in at their churches, or are invited locally to talk about various things they're working on. Sometimes they'll take on a public policy campaign. Some of our wage stop campaigns are taken on by our religious allies, and we have clergy that work on that as well. And most importantly, I think our work for the religious allies is to walk alongside workers. And we do this with union campaigns, like the one we're going to be talking about today, the Hyatt workers. We also are walking alongside Walmart workers that are trying to fight for better working conditions and fair pay at their workplace, as well as a number of other union campaigns. And we do work with the worker centers that I had referenced earlier, and our religious allies walk alongside them as well in their fight for getting stolen wages back and fair working conditions. And so today we wanted to focus specifically on our work with the Hyatt workers. And so I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Hyatt Boycott campaign and why Hyatt Hotel is being called out. And then we're going to have Brian share his story. Brian's a worker at the Hyatt Regency here in Chicago, to give you a little bit more in depth of what the workers are doing, how they're organizing, and what they're looking to change. So Hyatt Hotel has been destroying good jobs by eliminating full-time jobs and replacing these workers with temporary workers. They got really bad press, and I think it was probably the biggest act that they did of this was in Boston, where they fired 100 housekeepers that have been working there. Many of them have been there for 15, 20 years. And they fired them all at once and then used a subcontracting company to bring in new workers who were going to be only making minimum wage. And this saved Hyatt a lot of money, because a lot of those workers that have been working at the Hyatt for 15, 20, 25 years make decent wages, and they have benefits, whereas the temporary workers, they don't get any paid time off. They get paid for the hours they work, and they get paid minimum wage. So you can see how this is a huge cost-saving measure for Hyatt Hotel, but it's really ill treatment of workers and creating conditions that are just not livable. As we saw in the slides earlier, no one working a minimum wage job can afford rent. So you can imagine what this is doing to the Hyatt Hotel workers. Hyatt housekeepers suffer abuse. I think a lot of Hyatt Hotel workers suffer abuse. They're not respected for the work that they do. And I've heard this over and over again, that they are, they're fighting for a contract, they're fighting for a fair contract because they want respect. And I can personally testify to this. I shadowed an organizer here in Chicago at the Hyatt Regency, and I spent maybe 20 minutes at the hotel, and I got to spend some time with the housekeepers that clean rooms, and almost every one of them was either wearing a back brace or wrist, had their wrist bandaged up, or their wrists were swollen or bruised. And every time I asked them about it, and they kept saying it was from picking up the mattress or from bending over, and just the amount of workload they have compared to hotels that have signed contracts with workers is unbelievable. One of the housekeepers told me that the workers at the Marriott, the housekeepers at the Marriott, clean anywhere between 15 and 17 beds a day, and at the Hyatt Hotel, they don't have a limit for how many beds they can clean. They're allowed to make them clean. So any day, some days she cleans 20 beds, sometimes she does 24, and that difference really does injury to the workers. Hyatt is also refusing to maintain neutrality in non-union hotels where hotel workers are trying to organize. And without taking too much time going into why, ability to unionize and for workers to be able to collectively bargain is important, I think one thing we have to realize is that, it's so easy for the hotels and large corporations to pick off individual workers and, minimize them and patronize them and create an environment where, workers feel like this is the best deal they're going to get. Whereas if workers are able to collectively come together and say that, outline demands that they have for their working conditions, what they think is fair and a good contract, I think that gives workers a bit more safety and a healthy environment to work. So like going back to my earlier example, the Marriott hotel workers have a contract here in Chicago, and their contract says that they cannot clean more than 17 beds a day. That helps them prevent injury. And so we want Hyatt hotel workers to be able to do the same. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who is here with us from the Hyatt Regency, so he can give you a little bit more about why he is fighting for better working conditions at the hotel that he works at, as well as for other Hyatt hotels around the country.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Short. I've been working at the Hyatt Regency for 5 years, and I'm a husband and a father of one child. Basically, I've been working there. I've been there 5 years, and like during the beginning, the work condition was fine. We was getting like 20. We got 2 towers in our hotel. We have like over 20 people working in our department, and we have like 10 people per tower. And then so as the contract expires, the attendee got shortened. So now it's been like 8 workers, 4 for each tower, with the same type of workload. And we, on the position that we do is convention service. We set up meetings, conventions, theater style, schoolrooms, ballrooms, and even proms. So we be carrying like pushing like a flatbed full of tables, which is like 6 feet tall and can be well over 500 to 600 pounds. Sometimes with only 2 people, sometimes 3 people. And I said, maybe just not even a year ago, I have 2 coworkers who has been injured on the job. One worker was had a chair cart which was used for chairs, but since we didn't have enough guys, he had to put the tables on top of the chair cart and push it to the ballroom. And when the tables hit the tables fell and crushed his foot, and he had to go to the hospital. And another worker, he was striking down a big ballroom and had like over like it was a schoolroom setting for like I think 4,000 people. And we were striking the tables, and when he grabbed for a table, I think he might have pulled a muscle, something like that. So then he went to the Hyatt doctor. The Hyatt doctor told me it was just a sprain. It was okay. Just gave him some Vicodin and said you can go back to work. So he didn't trust the Hyatt doctor, so he went to his own doctors. And his doctor said that it was a good thing that he came, because if he would have worked a little longer, the muscle would have tore, and it caused more damage.
He needed surgery, right?
Yeah, he needed surgery. And the the reason why we call for a boycott is for a more safer environment and to stop subcontracting in our job, because I think that happened one time in our department. It was a third shift. They had scheduled some guys for third shift, and they scheduled this cleaning crew called United Service to strike chairs for a theater for 5,000. Me and a couple of other co-workers asked for do some overtime so they could help them out. And they told us that they didn't need us. They had enough guys. And that was one of the things I saw, that they were taking money away from us. And another thing I saw they took money away from us was we had a laundry. They subcontracted laundry, fired them, and brought in a third-party laundry called 5-Star Laundry.
What's wrong with that?
All the people that was working with the laundry are all fired, and 90 out of a job.
Levi, would you like to add something to maybe why the boycott, why boycott is the right tactic, or why you think the boycott?
Sure. So again, I'm Levi Pine. I'm a boycott organizer with the union, with UNITEHERE. And that's a good question. People ask me all the time, why don't you guys just go on strike? And I guess the short answer is we have gone on strike. And the long answer is we have to do both. Last fall, so Hyatt workers have gone on strike a whole bunch of times at a bunch of different hotels. Last fall, there were 8 different Hyatt hotels in, I think, 4 cities across the country that all went on strike at the same time for a week. And it was great, and people felt very powerful. But that was 8 hotels in a global corporation that has 450 hotels and over $1.5 billion of just liquid cash in the bank ready to spend, not even counting their other material assets. So it's just not enough to hurt them. And that's what the boycott is about. It's a way for, like, yes, workers are making sacrifices and are going to continue making sacrifices and are prepared to do that, but there's no amount of going on strike. We're just not, frankly, there aren't enough union organized workers to go on strike at the same time to be able to hurt the company enough to get them to settle. So the boycott is a way for us to essentially hurt the company more in a way that also minimizes risks for workers. There have been intermittent strikes, and there will be again, but in the meantime, people are still at work making a living while still fighting the company in a way that is, this is a brand new thing for our union to do, and it's something that I think not many unions are doing, calling for a boycott while workers are actually still at work. And it's worked incredibly well. We've pulled over $30 million worth of business out of the company in the past couple of years. Between this past Friday and yesterday, Monday, so in 4 days, we moved 4 customers, 4 conferences. So it's really, really picking up the pace. It's reached a point where, you know, workers have made incredible sacrifices and worked very hard to get the word out about what this fight is about. And the boycott has taken on a life of its own. You know, which is like that's what you strive for in any big public fight, right? Is that it takes on a life of its own and people run with it. Which I think is also, in my mind, why it's so crucial to have supportive allies. You know, workers will never stop fighting in the shop and doing delegations to the boss and organizing picket lines and going outside and marching around with bullhorns, but it's simply not enough to win. The company is only going to settle when they understand that it's not going to be profitable for them to continue their current behavior. And the only people who can really decide that is customers. That's not up to workers, that's up to customers. And that's why it's especially crucial that people of faith and conscientious consumers honor the boycott, because it's hard enough as it is to get like business conferences, you know, like pharmaceutical industry, whatever, to honor the boycott. We have to have a solid foundation of allies.
Thank you, Levi. So next week we're going to talk a little bit about, as people of faith, what does it mean for us to walk in solidarity with particularly the hotel workers at this time. And as Brian and Levi pointed out, that, you know, there needs to be more pressure, right? The company is not going to come to the table and settle on a contract, if, you know, without any other reason that's pressuring them. And so we want to be a part of this. We want to be a part of helping Hyatt hotels get a contract so that they have safer working environments and able to work in dignity. I have here with me also Adam DeRose, who is our online organizer, and he's going to share a little bit from his own faith perspective about why this campaign and work, you know, walking alongside Hyatt workers is important to an integral part of his faith.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam. As Sung-Yeon had said, I am the online organizer here at Interfaith Worker Justice, and I have been working with Sung-Yeon and some other folks with the Hyatt team on our online campaigns and some of the content for our website in order to make it known to everyone the kind of work that we're doing with the Hyatt Hertz crew and stuff that we're doing here. And it's interestingly, I would say actually probably my Jesuit education has led me to that work and to being here at this table. I am a graduate of Loyola University here in Chicago and was very active in their justice, peace and justice programs in the ministry department. And I'd say that the Jesuits, besides a college or an education, taught me lots outside of the classroom as well. I led groups of students to break bread with folks at a soup kitchen in the city, and I eventually went back by myself just because of how much I love the community that we all shared together. And went with groups of students on immersion trips, like out to West Virginia, where I learned about rural poverty and some economic justice through the lens of how corporations and their decisions can affect everyday folks. By the time I was leaving, I'd say that I was helping organize those same justice programs on campus in those immersion trips. I led a group of students out to D.C. to visit the Catholic worker community and participate in actions at the Pentagon and the White House and demonstrate how I feel about my faith and justice in a very intentional way. So back in undergrad, I studied journalism, but definitely found a real call to live out my faith values, and I feel like here at my work at IFWJ and in the communications department, many of the campaigns that we're doing, those things are what matter to me and to my faith, and that's why I feel called to do it. And I guess the Hyatt is a glaring example of calling on folks to live out those values. I'm going to read you their mission it's available on their website, and it says, to provide an authentic hospitality by making a difference in the lives of the people we touch every day, and we support that mission by adhering to a set of core values that characterize our culture. And so I think based on our conversation so far, we can definitely pull from that Hyatt, you know, they're hurting their workers that they touch every day in the workplace, and we heard some examples of that just a few moments ago. And Catholic social teaching, it informs us that the economy exists to serve folks and not the other way around, and work should be the same way. It's that agreement between the employer and the employee about the success of the organization itself. And I think we've heard that Hyatt workers are facing some tough working conditions, and they're responding in a way to get some respect from the folks that hired them. As Sung-Yeon mentioned, that they're injured on the job, and they have actually the highest injury rate among housekeepers in a study of 50 hotel locations. And they're not playing, the Hyatt management just isn't playing fair. And so I feel personally called to say something about it, and I feel like my work with IWJ here says just that. I'm not staying at a Hyatt hotel because I care about the workers, and I want to demonstrate, I want to affect their bottom line by not staying there and not participating in events at those hotels or convention spaces. And it's actually quite beautiful because other people of faith are doing the same. Recently they were called not kosher by a bunch of Jewish leaders and some other Catholic organizations, including San Francisco, again, their Archdiocese Office of Social Justice, and a number of religious scholars. They have moved their work out of a Hyatt hotel recently for a conference that's going to be coming up in a few months. And so I guess I'd encourage you all to check out Sung Yeon's presentation at the teach-in and join the boycott and support those workers.
Thank you, Adam. And so, yeah, I'm hoping and assuming that many of you on this call are here to learn more about what the boycott is about and planning to come to the teach-in. And I'm hoping that you could spread the word to folks that you are bringing or coming with, or even people that you see at the Hyatt. Chris has graciously reserved a room at the Marriott Hotel, which is right across the street, for us to host 2 breakout sessions with workers from the Baltimore area, Metro DC area. And so we will have something very similar to this webinar with a couple more workers at the Marriott during the teach-in. So I would really encourage you all to let others know. There's also going to be a couple of students that have been longtime supporters of IWJ that are going to be setting up at the exhibit hall during the teach-in, and they will be passing out information about the boycott as well as the breakout sessions. So I just encourage you all to let other people know about it. I would also encourage you all to go online and to hyatthertz.org, and you can learn more about the campaign itself, about more stories, about other people who have signed on to the boycott. And if you feel moved, you can also sign on to the boycott as well on there. And so the information for the breakout session is on the screen right now. I again, would like to encourage you all to tell your folks all about it. And in closing, I would like to ask if you all have any questions. I wanted to leave some time to have a discussion about this because I'm sure many of you have questions either for me or Adam or Levi or Brian, or if you just have a comment even, we would be open to that.
Great, thanks, Yeon. And so I'm going to kind of unmute folks for questions. And let's see, I'm trying to do it in a way that does not cause severe sound issues. Okay, I think I've got everyone unmuted who isn't from IWJ. So, do we have any questions out there right now? I have a question. This is Chris. Could you speak a little bit to the rationale for engaging in what UNITE has identified as an international boycott? So it's, we've heard about issues in the United States, in San Francisco and Chicago, and we know that there are other hotels in the United States where there have been blatant violations against worker rights. But why did the Boycott Coalition initiate an international boycott?
So, this is Levi. That's a good question. So it's a global corporation. We're not going to win if we only fight them in one of their many countries. Over the next decade, they are doubling the number of hotels in their company, and almost none of them are being built in the U.S. They're all being built in India and China. And while the boycott was a campaign that we launched here in the U.S., workers at other Hyatt hotels have been organizing for years. And we've only just begun to really coordinate with them, but there have been actions in the Philippines, in India, in Israel, in London, all over the world. I mean, the company isn't only doing bad things in the U.S. They're doing bad things everywhere. And I think what's really exciting to me about the global boycott is that this is a global worker organizing campaign. How often is that almost never happens, all at the same time about the same issues. And so it's really thrilling to me that we reached a threshold in the movement that workers being abused in the same way by the same company on the same planet are doing the same thing about it.
Great. Thanks, Levi. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to throw another one out there. One of the questions that people have shared with me is their concern with how or whether or not they should address this issue for those who will be at the Hyatt Hotel at the teach-in in November, whether or not they should address the boycott issue in dialogue and conversation with the Hyatt employees, especially maybe housekeeping employees, during that weekend in November. In other words, the question is, should they talk with employees about the boycott? Should they ask them questions about their labor situation while they're at the hotel?
Yeah, by all means, I'm never going to tell somebody not to do that. Folks should be aware that that's a non-union hotel, and workers will be, frankly, I would expect them to be terrified of talking about it while they're at work. I would not expect people to feel comfortable doing that. That doesn't mean people shouldn't ask, but it also likely means people will not be very forthcoming. And they're going to be wary about talking about it in front of their bosses.
Okay, thanks, Levi. Okay, any other questions for our panelists today? Quiet group out there.
Maybe people didn't figure out the mute button thing.
I think they're all good to go. Okay, was there anything else that Unite and IFWJ folks want to share or add?
I guess I would like to close with one thing, which is that, and maybe I've already said this a few different ways, but I think in my mind the thing that separates this from, the boycott is the thing that separates this from a labor dispute into a community movement. Like, by definition, a boycott only works if the wider community participates. And this is an opportunity for communities of faith to uphold their values in a very concrete way. This is a fight that we will not win if people of faith do not participate and put their values into action. And I think a very concrete example of that in Chicago was that last winter, the Hyatt company said to us in Chicago, said to us and the workers in Chicago, call off the boycott or we're going to take away everybody's health insurance. And we told everybody in the world that that's what they were doing, and we told everybody in the city of Chicago that that's what they were doing. And like 3 weeks before the company said they were going to do it, about 800 angry community members, just citizens of Chicago, came and did a ruckus picket line outside the company headquarters, which happens to be here in Chicago, and they backed off. If it had been only hotel workers, they absolutely would have moved forward with their plan. And the only thing that stopped them was that they understood that they were in the spotlight, and community members drew a firm line in the sand and said, we will not allow this to happen in our community. That's what has to happen everywhere. And I think it especially has to happen in communities of faith.
So this is Sangyeon. In closing, I think what I would ask is, Chris has definitely, gone over and beyond trying to work with us on this, and we're looking for, other faith groups to step up and, not just like say something if your community is going to the Hyatt Hotel, but if you know of other conferences that are going to the Hyatt Hotel, let them know, and feel free to pass on my information. We at IWJ have some resources that are available, and we can work with the UNITEHERE boycott team and help you all figure out, what the next steps are and how to actually engage in those conversations of trying to move the conference out, and using your power as a consumer to speak up for what is right. And so we really encourage you to think about those things, whether it's conferences you participate in or you've heard about. I mean, the one thing, the religious community is known for is conferencing. We love to get together and we conference a lot. So this is definitely an area that I think that we as people of faith can really make concrete commitments and follow through with living out our values. And so I ask all of you to take that into consideration. And, if you don't have time to follow with folks and you just want to send me an email and say, this group is going to the Hyatt, maybe you can follow up with them. I'm more than happy to look into it as well. I think it always helps if there is somebody who is connected and knows the group can build a bridge, but if not, I'm more than happy to do that work as well. So please keep us in mind and keep the hotel workers in mind, and let's get this boycott moving forward, and yeah, be on board with the workers as they're fighting for their rights. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, Sung Young, and thanks to everyone there from Interfaith Worker Justice and from UNITEHERE for taking time to share these perspectives and offer us some ways to become more involved in the boycott moving forward. We'll be, as I said earlier, we'll be posting a video of this webinar on the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice website. And as was mentioned earlier, there will be 2 breakout sessions about the Hyatt boycott at the Ignatian Family Teach-In, as well as a table with information about the boycott too. So thank you again, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.